Hello everybody, I'm Ajit K. Mishra. I'm back again with another session on winning communication skills. If you remember, in my last session I talked about certain challenges associated with the listening activity, and I also told you that if people do not take care of their listening challenges, they are bound to go to a disastrous result. So listening has several challenges when it comes to different types of listening, different types of listeners, and the other challenges associated with listening, like poor listening styles. So in this session, I'm going to talk about types of listeners, because every day we communicate with each other, we listen to each other, we speak, and then we come across listeners, and we have formed some idea of the different types of listeners we come across. Some of them we found to be good, with whom we build the rapport, and there are some others we are not really interested in. So this happens because of the different listening styles adopted by these different types of listeners. So we'll start with the first type of listener that are called detached listeners. Detached means they are not bothered by the listening content. They are not at all interested. They don't have any enthusiasm. They are not focused. They are not engaged, and they don't even care what's happening around them. They are never attached to the listening activity. So how do you know the detached listeners? You can easily guess, or you can easily tell that somebody is a detached listener by seeing whether the person has any eye contact with you as a speaker or not. So when you are speaking, if somebody doesn't have eye contact, then you know that person is a detached listener. And detached listeners always appear withdrawn. They don't show any interest, they lack enthusiasm, and then they are not bothered about what is happening around them. They are so discouraging, they are so demoralizing for the speakers that the speakers would like to see the back of them when they are speaking, because such listeners have at all no interest in the speaking or the speech or the listening activities, because they lack enthusiasm and they are never in for any listening activities. The other type of listener is the passive listener. Again, like the detached listener, the passive listener is also not interested. As the word suggests, they are very, very passive in their approach to the listening activity, and they may or may not have some eye contact. That's completely up to them. It may happen that at times they establish eye contact with the speaker, but most of the times they do not have any eye contact with the speaker. And they use their energy in such a manner as if they want to preserve a lot of energy for some other big task. So they use very less energy while taking part in the listening activity. So they show very less energy, which is also very, very discouraging to the speaker. Besides, they also, like the detached speakers, these speakers are also withdrawn. They withdraw so easily as if they are not interested in that listening process, in the listening activity. There is a third type of listener who is the involved listener. Unlike the previous two listener types, the detached and the passive, the involved listeners are in for some eye contact. They establish eye contact, and they always have an alert posture. For example, they are listening to somebody, they are very, very alert, they are focused. But there is an issue with such listeners. Most often they reflect on the message partially, not completely. That's a problem with them, because despite having two positives, showing some eye contact, showing alert posture, these types of speakers, they reflect on the message partially. That means they do not take the message completely. So that's an issue with such speakers. Finally, we come across a type of speaker that is called the active speaker. As the word, the name suggests, these people are very, very active when it comes to the listening activities, unlike the first three types of speakers, the detached or the passive speakers. Such people are very, very active in their approach to the listening activity. They always maintain a very alert posture when it comes to listening. You'll always see them remain focused all through the entire listening process. Their eyes fixed, their body language, everything is very, very positive, and they do establish eye contact and maintain it all through the entire listening activity. And then they participate, they are full of attention. How do you know? How do you tell such listeners? Because whenever you ask any question to such speakers, they will always respond to your questions, because they have been very, very attentive and they have been participating. Since they participate, they focus their attention on your speech, they are always in a better position to let you know what you talked about. So such speakers are very, very active in their approach. Since we found that there is one category, one type of speakers that is good, that's the good type of speakers, the active speakers. So what is an active way of listening, or what is active listening? So active listening is a very powerful communication strategy that is adopted by active listeners who have a very positive style or approach to the listening activity. Such a listening activity includes an engaged and responsive approach. Engaged because they are completely engrossed in the listening activity. That means they become one with the speaker and they move along with the speaker. They know what the speaker is talking about, and most often they are aware of what the speaker is talking about. And they are very responsive. Whenever a speaker checks with them, the speaker can find that they respond nicely. And they are very responsive in the sense that they send all kinds of signals. While speaking, you can actually discern those signals that they send to you. They send all kinds of non-verbal signals telling you, assuring the speaker that they are listening. They are attentively listening. And then at the end of this listening activity, they always add something to the entire activity by pitching in, by suggesting, by sharing their comments, by sharing their observations and various other things. So active listening is all about empathy and trust building. When we begin to listen to somebody, when we try to understand the perspective of that someone, what is the person saying? Why is the person saying that? With what kind of mental approach is a person saying that? When we begin to understand the thing from the perspective of the speaker, we show empathy towards the speaker and the listening activity, listening process, and that actually builds trust. And listening or active listening is very, very crucial to problem solving. If I do not actively listen to something, I will not find a way to solve a problem. So active listening can actually solve a problem. And it also encourages and it also makes or helps people share. Active listening. When somebody actively listens to you and shows or gives the right kind of vibes, the right kind of responses, you feel assured. And when there is assurance between the speaker and the listener, that leads to sharing of thoughts, sharing of ideas, views, opinion, without any inhibitions. And then it also leads to a relationship building. Because when we say something and there is no listener to either listen or understand what we are saying, no relationship can ever be built. So for any positive relationship to be built, it's a prerequisite that people, listen to the speakers actively. So if we can sum up active listening, we can very safely say that it is comprised of three very important things, three very important dimensions. Attitude. So active listening is all about the right kind of attitude. So if I begin by saying that I'm not bothered about what the speaker is going to say, I'm not bothered about what my colleague is about to say or my boss is about to say, so that will be not the right kind of attitude. That will lead to problems. Attention. During the listening activity, if a listener doesn't have attention, that means there is a big problem, and that also means that it will lead to an even bigger problem. So the lack of attention will result in a disastrous listening activity or listening session. And then third, adjustment. Adjustment is very, very important. For example, I may know certain things from a certain perspective. When I'm listening to a speaker saying things from a different perspective, I must adjust myself to the perspective of the speaker so that I understand what the speaker is trying to say and what the speaker means when he or she says that. So these three things, attitude, attention and adjustment, play a very important role in active listening activities. So that's all for this session. I hope you must have enjoyed the session, and then the things that I talked about might have helped you understand what active listening is all about, and I'm sure you're going to explore active listening yet further. So thank you for joining me again. Bye-bye.